All right, what we have here is a 2003 Mercedes C240. 4MATIC all-wheel drive wagon. Estate. It's called the Estate machine or whatever that they call it, the Estate. But it has a 113 V6. No, I'm pardon. 112. Apologize. It's a 112 V6. It's the 113 is the V8. The 112 is the V6, but they're everything else identical. The same pistons, same cylinder head design, same block, same all that. Just one's a V8. One has two more cylinders than the other. So what we have here, and I used to have the V8 supercharged version of this engine in an S55 AMG, and man, that thing would fly. So this engine that's in this Mercedes has a race pedigree backbone. I mean, it's got 3 valves per cylinder, so it's not just 2, it's 3 valves. It's got 2 spark plugs per cylinder, overhead cam, and it just purrs like a kitten and run and will just fly at 110 all day long. It'll do 110 all day long and get 25, 27 miles to the gallon. So we're it's got 150,000 miles on it. It's time to replace all the old rubber hoses and change spark plugs, change the ignition, change coils, and replace an oil gasket on the valve cover and the oil breather assemblies. So basically disassembling the whole top of the engine and removing the spark plug wire, moving all of it, and the rubber hoses and everything else, including the fuel line. I don't think we're replacing the fuel line, but I think I got to pop it off in order to get to, it's in the way of the valve cover, I think. So I got to pop the fuel. So basically I got to, all the hoses and assembly on the top of the engine and around the engine and in the back of the engine are going to come off and be replaced. Almost should be all of them, except the big, hard, big hoses that go to the manifold. But we'll go through all that, and here's what we got. So each cylinder has its own coil pack, and each cylinder has 2 coils. So you got the wiring harness from the electric ignition telling it when to fire, and then you got 2 spark plug wire holes that come out right here. And so these, turn it sideways a little bit, these 2 will be plugged in one above the other and feed down into the number 1 spark plug, and there's 2 spark plugs, so the number 1 hole. So you have an upper, now you have one to the left and one to the right. I believe that's how it is. Pretty close, a little off on angle, but 2 spark plugs per cylinder, just like an aircraft engine. And airplane engines have 2 spark plugs per cylinder. I don't know any modern day manufactured engine that requires 2 spark plugs per cylinder. A Mercedes, to me, is a sign of aviation, the way that they design and engineer things. So these aren't genuine Mercedes dealer parts. That's not. Some are. Those are. The coils aren't. And I've found really good deals all over the place for all these parts. And it can be, you can pay a third to more than a third on, sometimes way double or even triple of buying one of these off-brand Taiwan, Vietnamese, Chinese, whatever, that's rated good. I do all the background, do the research. I identified all these. They're like $300 or $200 a piece at Mercedes, and I got the whole thing for $50. All 6 new. I mean, so I'm into all of this for less than $300, and including turn signal and other stuff. And the oil, I've got 2 5-gallon or 5-quart Mobile One synthetic oil and filters and everything else. I'm ready to change, so everything's getting done. The valve covers are going to come off and get all new black. This is genuine Mercedes RTV. And then I went and bought 3 new bolts that go on top of the valve cover. So on top of the valve cover, you have an oil breather housing that's held down by 3 screws, and you got to replace them because they're magnesium and you don't reuse them. They're one-time use. So I went and got new bolts. So I'll clean everything tomorrow. I'll take everything apart, clean everything, take it apart, inspect it, and then seal everything back up, and then reinstall all new parts all the way through. And these are all the vacuum hoses. These all going around the back of the engine and down underneath and the side and what have you. And pick the whole thing up for less than 20 bucks. 50, I mean, you know, and this is a special little do-hack that some of these hoses all come in together and do their little thing. I think I paid 12 bucks for that, maybe. Mercedes parts aren't expensive if you're willing to take the time and look around and shop and compare parts versus the manufacturer against Mercedes-Benz, because you do get what you pay for. When you do pay the extra money and actually are able to, or you're able to actual source in your deal genuine Mercedes parts, they'll be in a superior product most of the time than your aftermarket or your less brand. But the cost cut is so substantial that it's worth my time to save a few $100 in my pocket and replace this once or twice for 50 bucks. It was less than 50 bucks for all 6 coils. It came as a kit. And then the wires, they weren't much either. This whole thing was not that much. But if I went to Mercedes and bought these parts, you know, 200, 300, 400, 500 bucks, 600 bucks. I'm probably under it for 200 bucks. Amazon, eBay, what have you. Look at who, you know, and check out the seller and look at their background on them and listen to what people are saying. It works. Hey, it's great. Save myself 500 bucks. You know, that's what I'm doing. I'm showing you how to go about doing it. You don't need to know the different names, Auto House or Amazon. Amazon and eBay are the 2 big monsters as far as having stuff come in for other type of market parts. But you can get the whole thing. So now for less than 1 car payment, I'm going to totally revamp the whole engine's bay and be good for another 60,000 miles. And it's all-wheel drive station wagon. It goes bahan through the mud like nobody's business. I found that out last night. Up in the forest, national forest. Took a logging road. Did good. Doesn't have the ground clearance very well, but it had all 4-wheel traction. So, all right. That's the project on the Mercedes. And treating the Mercedes project kind of just like I am the airplane, where we got all the airplane parts, pieces, and everything ready to go, and still got to get. So one thing I'm going to order now, tonight, is I'm going to order a welder / plasma cutter. It's kind of they're either all the way from two different types of tools in one welder box, like a cutter and a welder, or a MIG welder and a TIG welder, or an arc welder and a TIG welder, you know, that kind of thing. Well, I'm looking into that on Amazon and having a special welder come in so that I can weld TIG aluminum. I'm going to buy a machine that runs on 220 volts that'll give me enough juice to weld aluminum with TIG. And I'm going to weld that air breather box up as my first project, and just the cost alone of me doing that myself, by using the money, by buying the welder and doing that myself, I basically paid for my welder. If I sent that out to an FAA repair station and had that repair. If I sent that out to have it repaired, it'd be $1,200, $1,500. If I spend $700, $800 and buy myself a welding system with all the bells and whistles, the helmet and the gloves and you know everything that's required, I can do that for $700, $800, and then I can fix all of the stuff whenever I need to fix it. I can weld aluminum. That's what I want to do, is be able to TIG weld aluminum and lay a nice bead, and so I can be able to do this work on aircraft. And if you can do aluminum, you can always do steel, because it takes so much more electricity and much more load to do aluminum than it does steel. Steel is easier to work with than aluminum. So if you got a machine that can do the airbox and weld it all up and make it strong, then you've got a strong welder system that you can do everything else with as well. It's multitask. All right, anyway, that's it for now. Oh, here I have something just for thought. I went to the parts store here in town, local, and bought a digital reader, and I get to looking at it, and this thing's used. It's used or not designed right, or damaged in shipping, but you can see in this where it's shiny, it's been used, where you only use it within really 1 inch. So for like two inches or so is where you can see the slider where this thing's been locked onto it, right in there. See where it's sharp edges on the side? That's from this thing being slid open and closed with the lock. That's the lock digging into it. And I don't do that on just sit there and do that on the shelf. And it's not even really straight. So I'm gonna take that back and say it's damaged goods. Let's call it that. Because it's hard. I mean, you can tell it's wore when you adjust this just right, and you try to move it, it won't come back because it's so ovaled out. You got to loose each time. You got to keep loosening. Just keep sliding further back. Don't slide nice and smooth. It's all been gouged. Now we'll leave it at that. So even when you go buy tools, you got to check them out and hold them accountable, and it's your money. That's why I do this work myself, and I actually enjoy it. Mercedes is a good quality product to work with. So even these aftermarket hoses were so dirt cheap. The whole thing, $5 for, I paid for that. And that's a special hose, because all those come as a kit. This one I had to order separately. It was only $5, $6. Not for Mercedes though. Mercedes, you're about $30, $40, $20, $30, Yeah, it adds up, Mercedes. But when you pick up the Mercedes parts, sometimes, most of the time, 80% of the time, you can feel the difference. Sometimes it's the same manufacturer. It's the same part. A lot of times, actually I think it's more than that. A lot of times what I find is that their OEM manufacturer is just not labeled Mercedes, but they're the same manufacturer that produce it for Mercedes. So they just got one line that gets stamped with Mercedes packaging, and the other one goes to retail. Anyway, enough said. Hope you're enjoying the new vid. All right, talk to you later. Bye.